Let's go over really quickly a couple things. So today we're going to talk about English colonization of the Americas. We're transitioning into what is called period 2. So at the top of your notes, if you want to go ahead and put that this is period 2. Period 2. Again, if at the top of your notes you want to go ahead and put that this is period 2. Period 1 is now over. There are 2 sets. Oh, by the way, we're on boat notes. If you don't know, boat notes, not the other notes. The other notes are from Friday. They hopefully should have looked familiar to you, those other notes, because you should have accessed them. Yes?
We need to hire definition pictures so we can finish the connect the dots.
What's wrong?
We need to finish the connect the dots, but it's too low.
Oh, well, just try your hardest. In my opinion, I think that you could figure it out with the low resolution. So let's talk about the connect the dots, okay? So 4 years ago, when I first started A-Push, I wanted something like creative that kids would actually pay attention to my notes, and I tried a couple things, and then we did a connect the dots one time. And I don't know if you guys just have not had as wonderful of connect the dots childhood as I have had, where I've done that in the past, but all of a sudden people like freaked out and were like, I haven't done this since elementary school, and then it became a thing. So there was ones on the other ones, but I didn't know if we were going digital or not. But from now on, there'll be a connect the dots on each one. It's just kind of a thing we do. It's just a weird thing. We're just weird here, okay? Yeah, well, this one, so some of them, our biggest one that we do has 110 dots. So that, oh my goodness, okay. Since Tyson's getting on me, okay? So basically what happened is every single connect the dots relates to the notes in some way. So your job is to figure out how this one relates to the notes. And these actually become a really good thing for like memorization for when we go to the AP exam. All the time, kids will tell me that they're taking the AP exam on a test, and then they'll be trying to think of what notes it is, and they're like, oh, it's boat notes. Oh, boat notes. What was on boat notes? Oh, I remember, and it works for them. It's just kind of a weird thing. And in terms of the sassiness, okay, I get these from Google, and I don't control the connect the dot gods who create the connect the dots. I apologize for my behavior in regards to the connect the dots. Sheesh. Try something nice. Okay. Anyway, so in terms of tonight's class, okay, here's your homework for tonight. So first day of class stuff you should have already done, okay? If you haven't done that already, I frown at you, okay? That's due on Friday, as in all of your disclosure stuff is due Friday. So if you haven't done that, please get it done. Movie assignment, you hopefully have already done that. Your last assignment is on Canvas right now. It's called the City Upon a Hill assignment. It's about 15 to 20 minutes long. That's all we're asking today, okay? So 15, 20 minutes long for this assignment, the City Upon a Hill assignment. This week, you guys are going to have a little bit of less homework compared to B-Day, because B-Day is going to finish their homework up on Friday, okay? Anyways, so that's your homework. Make sure you know about it. And then starting next week, we're going to have our first quiz in this class, okay? I know, it's scary, but I feel 80% confident you guys are going to do awesome. Okay, so just kidding. You guys are all going to do great. The first quiz will be a transition for all of us. And we'll practice a little bit next class what that quiz will look like, okay? So let's talk about the English colonization of the Americas. So before we start, we have to finish our notes that would have been on the last notes, but it just transitions a little bit easier. So we've learned about Spanish colonization. Now we're going to switch into French colonization. French colonization centers around 1 or 2 ideas. And that's the only thing you'll see about French colonization in the Americas. So first off, you have Quebec and Montreal, which if you've ever been there, it is a lot of French. Everybody there knows French. One of my squad mates on COD, he is from Montreal, and he speaks French, and it is like the coolest thing ever, because sometimes he'll like get really mad and start saying stuff in French. And it's pretty exciting. I don't know what he's saying, but I'm sure it's heated. Okay? No, he wouldn't swear. I know he wouldn't swear. I'm sure it's not that. So anyways, so they speak French because who colonized the area? France. Magic. Okay? So these areas are going to be really where it centers around. So if you see any sort of map with Quebec and Montreal, you automatically know it's French colonization. And really, if you want to star that first bullet, that literally describes almost everything. Their whole world, if you want to highlight, settled around developing and exporting products. And the number 1 product is the beaver. If you want to circle this, star this. If you see the beaver, the first thing that should come to your head is France. And the reason why is because when they landed in Canada, they immediately began trading with the native tribes, and the native tribes had beaver pelts. At this time, beavers, they're definitely a New World thing. They bring them back over to France, and all of a sudden, all of Europe becomes obsessed with the idea of beaver pelts, and everybody wants a beaver pelt hat and a beaver pelt jacket. And so what ends up happening is that beaver pelts become the thing. France wants to go and get it, but here's the big difference between France and Spain. Spain exploits and takes from the natives. In contrast, they trade with the natives. So that's the number one difference. Out of all three, the French are the nicest to the Native Americans. Now, if you ever remember from back when you guys learned Utah history, have you guys ever heard of a thing called a rendezvous? Rendezvous is when the native tribes would meet with the settlers, they would trade, and everybody would have a good time. What language is the word rendezvous? It's French. I wonder why. It's almost like they traded with the French. Okay, that's why. So they had a really good relationship, and then one of the big things that they have too is the Mississippi River. So make sure that you know that they traded along the Mississippi. For the French. And the reason why they traded is, if you notice, the very top of the Mississippi goes up and connects into Canada. The very bottom becomes New Orleans. And New Orleans is going to be run by the French until 1812 or 1814. And we will talk about that because that's like a really fun day in class. So regardless, though, it is run by the French. And if you've ever been to New Orleans, you know that there's the French Quarter. That's the reason why. One thing that you might want to write down for slavery is they did have slaves, but it was far fewer than the other ones. So they did have slaves, in particular African slaves, and it mostly centered around New Orleans. Most of the other areas did not have slaves. And we don't need to talk about that. So the other thing, too, about Spain, just know that as Spain goes up into North America, one of the biggest things that they're going to have for Spain, they're going to be looking for legends, okay? So for example, you have this guy named Ponce de Leon, and he hears about this thing called the Fountain of Youth from the tribes. He allegedly goes and finds this water source, drinks from it, and all of a sudden he's like 30 years younger than he was. He writes this story, it goes over to Spain, he talks about this thing called the Fountain of Youth. And it goes literally viral over there, okay? Everybody comes over to try to get the Fountain of Youth. That's why there's so many movies about the Fountain of Youth. Nobody has found it. It is a legend, okay? Also, you had this other thing trying to find what was called the City of Gold. Allegedly, there was this beautiful City of Gold that was going to be able to fund you for life. So they said, for example, this guy wrote that when he went to the City of Gold, he ended up having like pebbles on the ground were gold, his plates were gold, everything was gold, and all that different things. So we talked about this last class. This is that chart from last class. Just make sure you know it, love it, things like that. By the way, make sure your AirPods are out. We have, I think, 7 of them right now. Just make sure they're out so that you guys can pay attention. So now we're switching into English colonization. So once upon a time, there was this fancy lady. Her name was Queen Elizabeth I. If you want to look really nice on Thursday for your semi-formal day, please look like her because that neck thing is like on point, okay? Queen Elizabeth I wants to be able to become the new Spain. She wants to be able to expand. So she begins to expand into the United States, and her first settlement is a place called Roanoke, which is also one of the biggest mysteries in American history and world history. So let me explain what happens. Well, don't spoil it for me. This is like when I get to surprise everybody.
I mean, please, tell me about Roanoke.
I would love to. Thank you for asking. Okay, so she sends this guy and says, hey, Sir Walter Raleigh, I want you to go ahead and I want you to establish a colony in the Americas. And it was a guy named Sir Walter Raleigh, which again, he looks like a lizard, super attractive. Please wear this on Thursday. So Queen Elizabeth sends him out and says, I want you to discover, search, find out, and view such remote, heathen, and barbarous lands, countries, and territories, to have, hold, occupy, and enjoy. Go forth. Well, Sir Walter Raleigh's too rich, so he's going to send this guy instead. Okay? So he hires this dude, John White, to go and settle the American colonies. He takes about 150 people with him. They go into the Americas, and they're going to settle the American continent. Well, there's a problem. See, when they show up, they begin to build, and there's like 150 of them. There's women and children and stuff like that. They end up having the very first baptism of his daughter named Virginia Dare. She is then written in as the first American ever. And that's actually what he wrote in his diaries. The first American ever was Virginia Dare because she was baptized there. Is that real? No. They've been here for thousands of years. But the first American, true American, is Virginia Dare. But there's a problem. You see, they went from England to what we believe is Virginia. We don't know where Roanoke was. And what happens is that they were not prepared for the harsh weather. They were not prepared for the soil. They begin to not have enough food, and it's almost starting to be winter. So John White has this idea. He's going to go back to England, get all supplies needed, bring it back to his family before winter, and everybody will survive. So John White leaves his family and his cute little Virginia Dare, and he goes all the way back to England. He gets his supplies. He loads up his ship. The day before he's supposed to leave, Spain declares war on England, and England is now at war. England commandeers all the ships in England and requires them to do military service. 3 years go by, and he can't leave because he doesn't have a ship. He finally is able to get a ship. He goes back to his family expecting this massive colony, and guess what he finds? Nothing. It's gone. Disappeared. And here's basically what happens. He shows up, and there are a lot of really weird things at the location that he had before. So, for example, White had told him that if they were to have trouble, that they would carve their destination into a fence and write T for trouble. Now, there was no T that was ever found. Roanoke had been completely ransacked. Everything was taken from it, including his chest, which was buried 8 feet deep into the ground and had all of his wealth. And it was gone. Also, there was 2 different groups in the colony. Both of them were missing, but only a single skeleton was found. And when they went to look at the skeleton, there was no evidence of any sort of like brutal murder or anything like that. Hi, what's up?
During your fourth, can I have some kids come in here and work?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, kids, caterers have no sub show up. We don't think they're coming, they have a flat tire.
Yeah.
They kind of said, oh, I can't deal with it.
Yeah, I can watch his fourth.
And it's a paid one, just so you know.
Okay, do you want me to go into his room or do you want me
I
to?
think they can come in here, it's just freshman success,
Okay.
and they're just supposed to work on homework and work on their goals.
Okay, sounds good. I can do that. You're welcome. Thought I was in trouble. Made it again. Okay. Anyway, so 2 groups are going to be gone, and then 1 skeleton was only found. There was also a ton of weeds, which implied that it had been gone for a long period of time. Now, the word Croatoan had been carved on a fence, and the word crow had been carved on a tree. The Croatoans were a local tribe. However, there was super bad blood between the 2, and they absolutely hated each other. And the settlers accidentally had attacked them and killed some of their people while they were there. And he had left a giant boat, and every single house was gone, but the only thing that stayed was a fence. And we're talking like big houses, completely gone, but there's a fence. So what happened to Roanoke? Well, we don't know, okay? We don't know what happened, but here are a few speculations of what may have happened. Maybe they left because they got scared, and there was harsh weather because that's in the area of the hurricanes. The Croatoans may have attacked them in some way. Perhaps they joined the tribe. Maybe they did all these different things. We have no idea what happened to Roanoke. But maybe we do. Now, in the 1950s, these things called the Dare stones came out. These were stones that were about this big, and they had scribbled on it from the Croatoan language. They interpreted these, and these were from Virginia Dare. She had written about how when he had left, she scribbled in Croatoan that they had reintegrated into the Croatoan tribe and had lived their lives with the Croatoans. Well, a museum buys this for the equivalent today of about $40 million. Puts it on display. 6 months later, they go to contact the guy, ask him where he found it. They can't contact the guy. They start to look into the stones. They're fake. They spent $40 million on them. But these also still come up today. A couple years ago, I was chilling on eBay, looking up Dare stones. There were Dare stones that were going for about $2,000 on eBay. People saying that this is the real Dare stones this time, and people are buying them. Please don't do that, okay? You're going to learn like one thing in A-Push. Don't go buy dare stones on eBay. They're fake, okay? But maybe there's more. Once upon a time at Stanford, they were chilling with maps because, that's what Stanford people do. And they took this map and they're like, you know what? This map's kind of cool. It's like Virginia E area. Let's x-ray it because that's cool to do at Stanford. So they take these in their fancy x-ray machine and they x-ray the map. And it's more obvious now because after like a lot of work they've been able to make it more obvious. But they had noticed this little patch right here. And they x-rayed it and they found this underneath. Now this implies that there was some sort of a fort or something at that spot. Then as they x-rayed it even further, they noticed that there's this little symbol. So this area is now what they believe is the most likely spot where Roanoke would have been. The only evidence that we even have of this situation of Roanoke is from John White's diaries. So there's really no evidence that happened. So since this came out, this was back in 2005, 6-ish, they have been excavating ever since. Okay? Now, here's a little bit of an update. 1 month ago, so this is like breaking news, one team of researchers in Roanoke, in this area, who have been there for 10 years, published a book. And according to them, based on the evidence that they have found at that site, they believe that the Roanoke people integrated with the Croatoans and lived their life with the Croatoans. And this is what is most acceptable to historians. This book is extremely controversial. Many historians say that this is a total lie. They're just trying to make money because, drama with historians. But regardless, though, we don't know what actually happened with Roanoke. What we do know is it was a complete failure. And now all of a sudden we need a better way to be able to have this. So now all of a sudden we're going to have a new way. So now why are they coming over to America? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. If you want to put next to this too, the 3 Gs. You've probably learned the 3 Gs before. The 3 Gs are God, glory, and gold. Those are the most common things that you will hear. And in this case, it's mostly going to be for trade and settlement and making more money in the Americas. Now, there was a few different ways that they funded these ones to be able to go over into the Americas. So, for example, you had what are known as the joint stock companies. Is this in order on your notes, by the way? Yes, okay, I just want to make sure. So anyways, so we create what's called the joint stock company, which is basically where several investors come together. They combine their money, and they are going to establish plantations in the Americas. Now, the most popular one that's going to establish the first colony is called the Virginia Company. If you go ahead and highlight that. That is the most popular one. If you ever see the movie Pocahontas, for example, they talk about it. They have a whole song about the Virginia Company. Okay? So regardless, though, they are going to have this group of investors. They're going to pay people to go and settle so that they can be able to have the rights to plantations in the Americas. They had already known that the Spanish had done this before. So the very first permanent settlement is going to be at Jamestown, if you will star Jamestown. So Jamestown becomes the very first permanent settlement in the Americas. Now what happens is that what we do know is that approximately, and new evidence has shown that it might have been more in here, somewhere over here was Roanoke. They land a little bit higher in Virginia, and they're going to establish Jamestown. Now, Jamestown does become successful, as in we continue European colonization of the Americas. But that doesn't mean it was easy. In fact, it was really, really bad. You see, what happened is that they began to really heavily have to rely on the native tribes. And part of the reason they had to rely on the native tribes so much is because they didn't know how to grow food here. And so what happens is they begin to interact, and one of those interactions is with Pocahontas. You guys have heard of her? No? Okay, thank you. Okay? Yes, you've probably heard of her. So you have Pocahontas. Now, the story of Pocahontas that's in the Disney movie of this beautiful love story of John Smith, it did not happen like that whatsoever. John Smith was quite a bit older. I believe he was like 35, and she was 14 at the time. It was extremely common, if you know anything about Europe, and you know about, like, for example, why Marie Antoinette was even in France. It was extremely common for you to exchange people and daughters of the emperor, the king, or whatever it could be, to be able to create alliance systems. So that's what happened with Pocahontas. Now, what happens is that they began to converse back and forth with what are known as the Powhatans. Make sure you know the Powhatans. Highlight that, because it's going to have to specifically do with Jamestown. So what happens is that the Powhatans begin to interact, and Pocahontas begins to be destined with John Smith. Now, the famous story happens that, as you know, she goes up and she saves him and makes sure that he isn't there and stuff like that. New research actually shows that it's extremely likely that the Powhatans arranged that to happen. They purposely made it so that she would save him and make sure that they were good, because then they would get married and it would create an alliance system between the two. So there's a lot of research that actually says the Powhatans created this entire alliance system because they didn't want what had happened with Spain. So regardless, though, they make this alliance. Well, what happens is they then enter what's known as the starving time. Make sure you know starving time for Jamestown. And basically what happens is that Jamestown begins to suffer tremendously, especially as soon as winter happens. I believe the statistic is like 67% of Jamestown dies in the first winter. So it's extremely harsh. They don't know what to do. Everybody is frail. It's massively failing. And if it hadn't been for the native tribes, they wouldn't have been able to survive. Now, another thing that happens as well at this time is we have what's called Anglicization, which is basically the idea that America wants to emulate English society. So if you want to go ahead and highlight, emulate English society. When they came to America, they did not say, I want freedom. I want America. They didn't say that, okay? Instead, what they said is they said, we want to be just like England. We are just an offshoot in a territory of England. Now, with this Anglicization, they did attempt to emulate them in many ways. We'll talk later on about why we began to transition away from when England happened. But regardless, though, they began to wear their clothes, speak their language, and different things like that. There we go. Now, the second major colony is going to be in Maryland, and Maryland becomes the next one, which is a proprietary. Instead, so if you want to make sure you put down to know the difference between joint stock and proprietary, joint stock means investors come together to buy rights in America and fund the colonization so that they can have the rights. But instead, a proprietary colony is going to grant large amounts of land to a private owner. So it's basically just like buying land. Now, in Maryland, they also had this other thing called the head right system. So how they decided to divvy it up, you would have a single owner that would go and buy a lot of the land. And then what they would do is to divvy up the land, they would have the head right system, which means however many people in your family, the heads of your family, is going to end up determining how much land you end up getting. And they're going to be mostly focused on tobacco and agriculture, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And we don't need that. So we're going to do an activity today. Yay! So you need to go ahead and pull open your computers, please. So again, we're going to go ahead and pull open your computers. So pull open your computers. And then
Miss Ray here. So we're just going to go ahead and finish up class today by doing a little bit of an activity. So you're going to go ahead and go to your day by day, which you guys can see on the screen that is in front of you. Once you go to the day by day, go ahead and just scroll down to the bottom where it has this distance learning students, please wait. Okay. You're going to go to assignments for today, and you're going to go ahead and click on the immigrant ship list Jamboard. Now, one thing really quickly where it says this homework signups for movie activity, distance learners do not have to do that. So if you're a distance learner, we will do something different for that activity, but you don't need to sign up for that activity. Okay? So anyway, so we're opening up our immigrant ship Jamboard, and what I want you to go ahead and do is click where it says open the assignment found here and go ahead and open that up. So what we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be looking at the differences between different ship manifests to different areas in America. So this is kind of introducing us to where people settled and where people went. So as we go through this, we're going to be using what's called a Jamboard. So a Google Jamboard is basically like an online whiteboard. So kind of think of it that way. If in the top right hand corner you see that there's 3 little dots, you can go ahead and click those 3 little dots and press make a copy. Go ahead and press make a copy and go ahead and press enter, and now you're able to edit your Google Jamboard. Now, as you go to do this Google Jamboard, the left-hand thing is going to be really helpful to you to be able to, for example, move things around, insert images, stuff like that. We're going to really care about this one right here, which is going to be the one for the little notes. So if you click, and it's kind of hard because this thing is not in a good spot. Okay, so obviously it thinks I'm trying to do something different. One second. So if you click on the sticky note that's right here, you can be able to edit this at all. So if I like put in anything like that, I can be able to make it bigger or smaller, as you can see like that. And I can double click it and adjust it any ways that I want, and it will automatically readjust things. And you can also use it to, for example, you can change things, or you can, you know, change the color or whatever it possibly be. Over on the left-hand side, you're also going to want to use your pen tool for this activity. So if you click on the pen tool, you can see that you can go ahead, you can circle things, you can do little arrows, you know, you can do whatever you want on here as well, and press the undo to be able to undo that. So here's what you are going to do. So we're going to go ahead and start with the first list. And what I want you to go ahead and do is you're going to go ahead and take your sticky notes, and I want you to go ahead and identify 3 things that you're noticing in this document. Now, if you need to zoom, you can press the little zoom button up here and go to like 200% so that you can be able to see it a little bit easier like that. Or you can go out. It's kind of up to you of what you would like to be able to do. But regardless though, I want you to go ahead and add in something that you're noticing. Think about the demographics. Who are these people? What ages are they? What genders are they? That's what you're going to want to look for. So if I, for example, do reason 1, which I'm just adding that in there so that you can see it, I'm also going to go ahead and use my pen tool. And with my pen tool, I can go ahead and I can mark this up. So for example, I could say that this represents my first reason over here on the left. I could also change my pen tool, and I could also possibly highlight things. So for example, I'm changing my highlighter right here, and I can go ahead and highlight a specific section that I'm referring to, whatever you want to do. So again, you're going to go ahead and look at this, and I want you to go ahead and think as you look at this, what are some of the things that you are noticing? Who are the people going? Where are they going to? And what makes up their demographic? So go ahead, pause the video, and go ahead and do that. So now that you've paused the video, I'm going to go ahead and explain what you should have written. So there's a bunch of things that you can be able to look at. So for example, if you notice, you can see in this document they're going to New England. So you can see it at the very top. So you should have, in theory, been able to see that they are going to New England right here, okay? So we know that that's the area that they're going to. One of the things that you can notice as well is that there's a lot of age differences. So 9 years old, 5 years old, 3 years old, 20 years old. So there's a lot of age ranges between here. Notice one thing, for example, notice the overall age. So you can see this person's 40, 35, and 40 right down here. So the average age span at this time is only going to be 35 years old. So the fact that they are older probably implies that they're going to live longer. We also have a lot of young kids. About 25% of kids don't make it past 5 years old at this time. So we can tell that they're probably going to live a lot longer in these different areas. Notice, for example, who's at the top of the list. Let's look at his position. If you notice right here, he is a minister, and we can assume that that probably means that he's the most important person in this list in terms of his job. So another thing that you can notice in here is notice the groups of families. So look at the last names. Hull, his wife, his daughter. So now we can imply probably that these are going to more than likely be families that are going there. If you notice too how it says his servants, so we know that these are servants. And by the way, at this time you don't have to be rich to have a servant. It's kind of like a normal, just lower caste job. And as you go through here too, you notice, for example, none of these are slaves, right? All these people in reference are referred to as servants. If they were slaves, they would not be referenced by that name. So now you've gone ahead and done the first one. Go ahead and now turn to the second one. So if you see where it says next frame, go ahead and click that. Now on this document, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and look at who's in this document. Same exact activities before, but you're going to notice it's very, very different. So go ahead and take about a couple minutes, pause the video, add 3 sticky notes, and connect them with the pen tool and show what are 3 things you're noticing in this image. Ready, you go. Okay, perfect. Now that you've done that, let's go ahead and let's look at this and compare and see what it means. So some things that you're noticing first off is that most of these people are male. In contrast to the last one that we looked at, you'll notice that there are females, although males are going to be at the top of the priority list. Now we mostly have males, and they're separated. This implies that they're single. They're not coming married, or they don't come with a family or anything like that. Now we do see some women down here, and more than likely these women are likely prostitutes or also other labor workers to be able to help out the men. We can also notice, for example, their ages. Their ages tend to be in their 20s and late teens. This is the physical time of your life, the prime time of your life. So there's a really good likelihood that these people are going as laborers. If you notice that some people, so for example, these two people over here are older, it's really likely that those are probably going to be the people in charge because they are not the manual laborers. If you notice too, you'll see up here how they have to take this oath of allegiance and supremacy. This is actually really common, not just in this area, but in most areas, that you have to give your commitment to the crown. So the final thing that I want you to do is you're going to go ahead and go to page number 3. In this one, I want you to go ahead and create 3 sticky notes that are comparisons between the two and looking at the differences. So what I want you to go ahead and do is you're going to come up with 3 differences between these two lists. Now I want you to be specific. So instead of just saying they have different ages of the people, instead you could put something along the lines of the people going to Virginia, as you can see at the top of the document, are younger, while the people who are going to New England have various ages, ranging from young to old. Okay, so that's one difference. And then we want to make sure that we're, again, being specific. We're not just saying here, I could have just said they're different ages. Now I'm being a little bit more specific. Once you've done that and all 3 of your pages are done, you're going to go ahead and download this file. If you click on the 3 little dots, you're going to click on the 3 little dots and you're going to press download as PDF, and then you can go ahead and upload to Google Drive or to Canvas, and then you're good to go. So just to let you know, as a quick reminder, your homework for tonight is going to be the City Upon a Hill assignment. Distance learners do not have to do the movie assignment because you're going to do an alternative assignment because that's an activity we're going to do in class. Have a great day.